Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, May 8th. Welcome to the council. We are in the final throes of approving the FY24 budget, and we're going to be spending all of this week reviewing the committee recommendations and working towards creating a budget that is fair and equitable, provides support for our hardworking employees, takes into account the situations among our 1.1 million residents, wanting to make sure that people can continue to afford to live here. And so as we start this week, it is only befitting that we get a status update on the revenues and expenditures, where we are as a body, as we've been deliberating over the last 3 weeks. But again, I just want to take a step back and remind everyone that this budget is unlike any budget that the council has recently had. It is a $6.8 billion budget that has a proposed 10% property tax associated to it, and we are working through all of those different mechanics and math, and I'll now turn over to Mr. Howard and Ms. Michelson to provide us with a status report on where we are.
Thank you. So at this point in the process, we are giving you a summary of the committee's actions to date. As you know, as you go through council this week, you may make changes to some of the committee recommendations, and we will provide you with another status report at the end of the week of council work sessions. So I'm going to quickly go through some of the highlights here and turn it over to you for questions. First, most notable is that the committees have recommended a total of close to $29 million in reductions from the county executive's recommended budget. And the $29 million in reductions are for items not recommended to be put on the reconciliation list. On the reconciliation list, there is a total of $306 million total for both high priorities and priorities. That includes items that were those items that the committees felt most strongly about were high priorities, items that they would like to see funded, but were not quite as significant, were designated as priorities. The high priority list is $241.5 million, but $156.4 million of that is for the school system. Most of the reconciliation list is for items that were in the executive recommended budget. However, the committees did feel the need to add, in some cases, to the budget that he recommended, and close to $16 million were for items not included in the budget. So attached, you have all kinds of summary charts and information and the full reconciliation list. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions.
Colleagues, I'll start off, but open it up to questions colleagues might have. For those who don't have the packet in front of them, can you provide some overarching picture on the committee work?
Yes, absolutely. And on Circle 2, for those of you who have the packet, is a summary of the committee recommended reductions, and in the fuller reconciliation list, you can see how much each committee put on for additions on reconciliation items. But just going through the reductions, the Econ Committee recommended $2.6 million of reductions. The Education and Culture Committee, $22.3 million in reductions, all from the school system. The GO Committee, $1.46 million in reductions. HHS, $54,000. Parks, Planning, Housing, and Parks is $1.7 million. Public safety, close to 500,000, and T&E, 340,000 in reductions. And the you can see on Circle 1 also the additions on the high priority list. So by far the largest chunk is for the school system, and you'll see that throughout on the reconciliation list for both high priority and priority. The biggest chunk went to the school system. So Circle 1 provides you the by committee add both to the high priority and the priority reconciliation list. Again, school system the highest, followed by HHS. Some of the smallest additions were in the Econ committee and some of the joint committees. So,
thank you. Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you. Good morning, and appreciate staff's work on the packet. Just wanted to, as you noted, you know, both the most amount of reductions and the most amount on the reconciliation list are from my committee, from the Education Culture Committee, because it's half the budget, and obviously very important. Wanted to thank my colleagues from E&C. We worked through a session on last week to reduce and just point out that 22.3 million is associated with 1% on the tax rate, and we thought that was appropriate to lower that amount because of the fund balance issue, and it still leaves the school system with some fund balance, but not $25 million of fund balance. And you know, we put the 7 tranches on the high priority list for the school system and 2 on the priority list. And I just wanted to, you know, point out, and I guess as far as a process question, we did so in the sense, and I said at the time that, you know, there will, and this is in previous years, there will be things that make it on the priority list and things that don't make it on the high priority list, and vice versa, because obviously we're 11 individuals, and someone's priority, I know in my household, someone's priority is not necessarily my wife's priority, and vice versa. So could you talk a little bit, you know, about the process from this point? You're obviously giving us an overview today, but how we're going to move through to whittle this down and make the difficult decisions over the next week or so.
right.
Well, if I could jump in. So the process that we are moving forward is starting today. We're getting this overview right now, and then throughout the rest of this day through Friday, each committee is going to report out what their recommendations were. And this is a departure somewhat from the previous councils. As I noted at the beginning, this is an unprecedented budget. We've never used state law to provide for a tax increase for MCPS, which we've all been working through. And so as we go through this process, each committee chair will report out the recommendations, and colleagues are free to motion to change anything they want. Make something a priority that hasn't been, make something a high priority, motion to remove an item altogether in an effort to find cost savings. And so all of that will move forward. The reason that we've actually added a number of days to this session, to this week, is because there have traditionally been a number of items that have gone on the reconciliation list. I'm sorry, on the consent calendar, things that are not controversial, things that there is unanimous consent for, but in this case, there are items that have been listed as high priority. And we want to make sure that anything with a high priority item attached to it receives full conversation at the council. Some of them might not get any conversation, but they need to at least be acknowledged and go through that process. Does that answer your question, Councilmember?
I think so, yes, and obviously I appreciate you recognizing this is a little different than we've done it before, and obviously we're in an unprecedented year. The way I interpreted, and I think some others probably interpreted the priority list, but that's helpful, you know, because I just want to make sure to the public, all these things are listed, high priority, that we can have the discussion. Any council member can raise any issue off this list. There are obviously $28 million in things that we're not going to discuss because we all, unless someone raises them, because we all suggested to remove them. So that's helpful. I appreciate that, and I'll yield back.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Albanaz.
Thank you. So obviously we'll dig into this over the next week or so, but just something that understandably has grabbed a lot of headlines is the number of vacant positions. We've each tackled this through our respective committees and in HHS, obviously like every other committee, and there were a larger number of vacancies within HHS. What we have found is that work is being done by somebody, in some case contractors, and so it's not necessarily a savings, because I think there has been a sense from folks that I spoke to as recently this weekend, we were at a couple of baseball games, that were understandably really concerned with the sheer volume of vacancies and how that feels as though it's an abuse of taxpayer dollars to have particularly positions that have been open multiple years. But as you dig deeper, there's often an explanation. Whether you agree with that explanation or not is, we'll have to decide that. But for our general public, as we go through this, it's not going to be a panacea to eliminate the sheer volume of vacancies that are within this budget as a matter of savings. Operationally, it might make sense, but it's not going to result in a lot of savings.
If I could just add on that issue, the committees individually have been working through specific positions and what can be
Ms.
eliminated.
Michelson, could you speak a little louder or raise the microphone?
Sure, sorry.
Thank you.
So you've been working through that in committee, but on this Friday, we are going to have an opportunity just to revisit across all departments whether there's something further the council wants to do related to vacancies. So we will be returning to that issue.
I appreciate that. And I had similar questions to Councilmember Jawando. And some of this, because we've never quite done it this way before, we'll see how it goes. I think, we'll make for pretty long conversations, which is okay. And we'll, methodically make it through. I do think that because of the sheer volume of information that we're going to have to work through, having at least half a session for any cleanup to make sure nothing's fallen through the cracks or missed, I think is obviously going to be even more important this year than others. So as we build in time, I would just make that request that we have some time at the end just to reconcile everything and give us a chance to all process, because a lot of decisions are going to be made on the fly. So with that, I yield back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you. Appreciate all the staff work here. Appreciate all the committee work here. Obviously, there's a lot more work that we have to do throughout this week to solidify this. I think differently than any other year, the reconciliation list, which previously had been kind of like a, I don't want to say a sideshow, but a marginal difference in terms of what it was including. This year, it basically is the main event. And so, I think we need to take that to heart and understand the dynamics here. A few things that I think are important. One is consistency. I have noticed at times that there were differences, and I understand this is unprecedented. It's a different process, and everybody, council members and staff, are all getting used to that. Certainly the public and those who care deeply about individual line items are getting used to it. But there have been times where certain items are recommended by staff in one committee as a priority, and another committee almost the exact same thing is recommended as a high priority, that are virtually identical, a 3% inflationary increase, which was done across the board, for instance. And so I just hope that as part of this conversation, we equalize that for the council's consideration, because I do think that there's a broad interest, as has been discussed in, I think, every committee, at least every one that I have participated in or listened in on, that is the interest and the will, certainly, of the body, that we treat these issues equitably across the enterprise. So I just want to note that. I know there's an interest there, but I want to publicly say that, and also request that that be done, and any changes that are made, we just be aware of what the changes were, and that this is the choice, to treat them, the same. And then the last piece, if you just look at the sheer number on the high priority, we have prioritizing is saying what is most important. Everything on this list is important, and I think that makes sense, because these are all important programs. But given the sheer number, even on just the high priority list, there are going to be some tough choices ahead, and we're going to have to take these up soberly, and we're going to have to make some difficult decisions, and I know we're prepared to do that, but I just think that it's important. The budget isn't finished until the budget is finished, and I think it's important for the public to be aware that not only do council members during the course of the next 4 or 5 voting sessions here at the full council have the opportunity to move things, but just because of where they end up at the end of this week, based on where we ultimately land on some macro level decisions, there are going to be moving parts to this budget, perhaps until it ends. And I just think it's important to acknowledge that and note that. But really appreciate the work of staff, and really appreciate colleagues. I know we have some very difficult decisions ahead of us, and appreciate the understanding of the community and of the public that this is a very tough budget to follow. It's a very tough budget to work on, but we're navigating through it as best as we can together. Thank you, Mr. President.
I appreciate those points, Council Vice President Friedson, and particularly within the priority and high priority and the different ways in which they were recommended, right, the different priority levels. So we're going to work through all of that, and if there are discrepancies, as anybody thinks there might be, we can address those. But also, even within, this is an important point to note, even within the high priority list, there are still items that should be differentiated. Particularly there are priorities and programs that people think we should have that are high priority. And there are other costs of increased costs, be it because of inflation, because of fuel prices, or any other types of macroeconomic fluctuations that need to be increased as well, right? So we're gonna dive deep into each of these as we go through the process, but appreciate you raising that. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Good morning. Very quickly saying that, as you may notice, the Economic Development Committee is the second highest in terms of reductions. And I just want to point out that we were very strategic on the things that we removed or reduced in the budget. And we are, I think all of us, not just the Economic Development Committee members, but the entire council is very strong in terms of prioritizing economic development for Montgomery County. But in this budget, I think we did the right thing in making those reductions because, they were very strategic. That's what I want to say, and we're going to go over them throughout the week, as the council president said.
I appreciate the chair of the Economic Development Committee pointing that out. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you, and thank you both for the work that you've done. As much as we think we're overwhelmed, I know that you are too, so thank you for your work. A couple things, I just wanted to piggyback on Councilmember Albornoz brought it up, and Councilmember Friedson seconded it. The issue of inconsistencies from committee to committee, I think that really comes to bear in the way that vacancies and new positions were treated. And I know that that's a big issue that I think everyone is concerned about. And so in terms of when we look at that, I think that what's going to happen is as soon as we hit the first budget, we might know what we're doing, and the second budget's going to be completely different, or the second committee. So I don't know if we have a conversation about vacancies and new positions before we delve into it, but I think that that's something that we are all assuming that we're going to make some cuts or changes, whether it's cuts in positions or increases in laps. So I don't know if we want to have that discussion sooner rather than later. And then also the issue of the discretionary, non-discretionary. I think it's very important when we start to talk about the high priority list. The assumption is that everything that's non-discretionary is on the high priority list. If not, that we need to make that correction. But I think it's really important before we even start the discussion to know what is non-discretionary in the high priority list. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Balcom. So you and I have the pleasure of serving on both committees together, so you've probably heard me say this, but I'll state it for the general public, that the process for the vacancies, identifying vacancies, quite frankly, started at our first T&E committee session, where we asked Director Conklin which of these vacant positions he did not think the department needed any longer. And that evolved into a conversation that resulted in a memo we sent to the county executive saying, identify non-recommended personnel cuts, reductions, recognizing that 1,200 to 1,500 vacancies exist on any given day. And we as the legislative branch should not dictate the minute personnel decisions within the agencies and departments. Let the managers and directors and the CAO make those decisions. And so what resulted thereafter was the county executive sending us a memo with 2 different scenarios. And we are continuing to work off of that and work off of the conversations that we have had over the last 3 weeks in committee. And so we will be providing a revised outlook for vacancies with respect to the work that we've done in committee, with respect to the county executive's input, and that should be forthcoming perhaps even towards the end of this week based on these conversations. Mr. Howard, I'll just invite you to share some thoughts on what I just said.
Sure. No, we taken what the county executive sent over. We're looking at that and reviewing it with OMB staff to make sure we understand the different implications of some of the additional laps they suggested as non-recommended increases in different departments, as well as reviewing what the different committee conversations have been on some specific positions, because there have been some committees that, in discussions with the departments, have determined that it would be appropriate to reduce funding associated with certain, certain positions, and making sure we incorporate those discussions into that, kind of scenario as well, and seeing then if we can kind of come up with an alternative that allows for some additional laps to be used as part of the budget in a way that would be hopefully the least impactful to departments as they need to provide their services.
You're good? Okay. Councilmember Giwando.
Thank you. It's a good segue. I just wanted to ask, I know, Mr. Howard, you had helped our office clear up this question of vacancies, right? We had some discussion in the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee about what is our authority vis-a-vis the ability to remove a position as opposed to not fund a position, which is clear that we can obviously do that, and how that factors in with lapse. I just think it would be helpful to state what you all sent to us, and so that's clear as we move into the vacancy discussion over the next week.
Thank you for that question. And actually, we've been working with the council attorney, Ms. Wellens, and she's been working with the office of the county attorney to make sure the attorneys are all on the same page. And we'll, as soon as we have something, we'll share it out, a written kind of response to all council members. But essentially, the position of both the council attorney and the county attorney is that the council has the authority to not fund a position, to remove the funding for the position for the entire year, but not to eliminate or abolish a position. The ability to abolish a position resides within the authority of the county executive.
I appreciate that. Thank you, and I look forward to the guidance in writing too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And thank you to the hardworking staffs that all of us have, but especially central staff during this time. This budget is, as has been mentioned many times and will continue to be mentioned, is a very difficult one. But from the public safety side, I think we have to continue, as much as we're concerned about all the vacancies, and we are, the vacancies for our first responders have taken on a whole new meaning. It's the first time ever that I can ever remember, and I think it's the first time ever in Montgomery County, we've actually said we're giving a signing bonus for police officers to meet our competition and from other jurisdictions, and we're starting to see that signing bonus, that suggestion is paying off. So as we go through this, we have to keep all of that in mind. As far as for vacancies and contract employees, and it's been mentioned a couple times, but I believe in the future, and everything you think of it while we're going through the process, but I believe in the future we should have a statement that says these 1,200, and it changes every 15 minutes, how many vacancies we have are vacant but filled with contract employees. so that we are aware whether the service, whether the work is being done by someone, though we don't necessarily want the contract employee, we want our employees to be filling that job. But at least we would be aware of what is going on with them, because the numbers get overwhelming. And then I also believe that we should say, if there's a vacancy, who's doing the service that vacancy was, the person who was in that job was doing, and that so we would know whether or not we actually need that vacancy or not, and how it's being performed. When we use contract employees, and they're very helpful, but that contract employee many times is costing the county more, because we're paying a contractor who has other expenses beyond the employee, and the employee themselves is getting actually less than if they were working for Montgomery County when you figure the benefits and everything else. So I think we need to keep this in mind. I think this budget, beyond all other budgets, has reminded us of those issues, and I appreciate and I have to say that when we talk about priorities and high priorities, and we've heard people say if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. What we've decided to do, I think collectively with the whole group, we've called it priority and high priority. And there is a difference, and I think that, there are issues, and we're going to have the discussions to bring it off the list or take it up on, to raise it on the list. But the reality is that most of what we do in Montgomery County is in some way or another affecting somebody. And that's a priority to that person. It might not be a priority to the whole public, but it's a priority to that person, and we have to keep that in mind in order to be fair and equitable. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the work on this. I just wanted to raise 2 points. I know my colleagues, we've been talking about vacancies. Another issue that we raised back in March when we were presented with the county executive's budget was the fact that there were one-time funding streams being used in the operating budget. We discussed the fact that we're looking at reserves, moving from what were ARPA dollars to ongoing expenses, and the fact that the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee had recommended the use of one-time funds from the increase in income tax this winter to go to PAYGO, but that did not happen. So I just want to thank the staff for putting in a column here on our packet of what are one-time expenditures, because I think as we go through our high priority and our priority list, it is really important that we are looking at what are one-time expenses that we may be able to afford and fund, and then what are ongoing expenses that we are encumbering ourselves with for years to come. The second point is as we're going through each of the department's budget and what the committee did, there are these cross-cutting issues that go across different budgets that I think we just need to keep in mind. Economic development is one of those things that crosses the Economic Development Committee and also Government Operations, and I'm sure some other committees. How different departments are doing hiring and recruiting. We have an Office of Human Resources, but I've also noticed a number of departments have also put in funding for certain things, so I think that's something we need to discuss. And then finally, this is an issue I raised when we first received the budget that cuts across many of the different committees and departments, is our work on mental health issues in the community. It shows up, in the education budget, HHS, but also public safety. And it really is a priority for us as a county to address this crisis, like so many things. But I just wanted to lift that up, that as we're looking across at the different budgets, when we get into the weeds, we make sure every now and then we pop up and look at the macro in these three buckets of the work we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. Building on that, I wanted to note specifically that in some cases, even especially as we're looking at recruitment and hiring, we have particular departments where they may inadvertently be competing with each other for the same types of people. And so thinking specifically about, for example, in public safety, where our different law enforcement operations are all struggling with staffing issues and may have similar audiences, but as each of them note, of course, each of their departments and each of those positions, they're providing different types of roles and are going to be attractive to different people. And so the same person who might walk away from one recruiter might be interested, from an MCPD recruiter might be interested in a recruiter from the sheriff's office. And so I think this is also a moment for us to come together as a council and being able to see all of these different pieces at the same time to note how can we help these departments to be working together, and how could we also be, have fiscal responsibility tied into that as well, while also at the same time hopefully having better recruitment and retention efforts overall. Also just wanted to ask council staff 2 questions. Logistically, as we look at reconciliation, just wanted to make sure that both the priority and the high priority items are going to be in the packets in some kind of fashion that's going to allow us to talk about them together. We have instances, of course, where we may have, some tranches of a particular item, maybe priority and a high priority, and so basically, the committees have set a ceiling and a floor, and so being able to talk about those together is going to be important, but also just noting, obviously, that each of the committees has put both priority and high priority items purposefully onto the reconciliation list, and making sure those are there in a way that the public can digest, and of course that we can discuss, I think is going to be important. Can you all confirm that that's something that you all are working on?
Yes,
with formatting
definitely, and in fact that's why we've circulated this list today. That was our first starting effort to make sure that across all the committees the information is available and to our public, and as you go through the individual departments and agencies, that information will also be there so that the council can look at the committee's recommendations, determine whether you want to make any changes.
Great, thank you. And then I just wanted to check if a member of the public right now wanted to see that full, spreadsheet or list that we have of all of the priority and high priority lists from each of the committees, where can they find that?
It's going to be on the website for the staff report from today. As you know, because we finished work on Friday, it was not, we couldn't pull it together until the weekend. But if it's not posted yet, it will be shortly this morning. It is posted, so it is available.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much.
It is part of the packet for this morning's conversation. And Councilmember Mink, I also appreciate your comment about making sure that our agencies and departments are able to work together, particularly in areas where there are personnel entanglements. But I also want to reemphasize that we in this body are taking up the county executive's offer 5 years ago to restructure county government. And that is what this conversation about vacancies is about. If he's not willing to do it, we will. Councilmember Lutke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say I think I understood the assignment, so I hope I've done my due diligence. And in addition to the issues that we are confronted with respect to personnel, we also have some procurement things we need to tighten up. So that's been high on my radar in terms of checks and balances or lack thereof in certain areas where sole source contracts are being done and maybe shouldn't be, or there should be more back and forth on that. So that's a top priority for me. And with respect to certain types of employees, it's really important for everyone to remember, and this would be good to have broken out, where there are legal requirements that you have a certain number of people covering, or else you're taking, for example, an ambulance out of service, right? Or you don't have enough to patrol a particular area during a high needs time. Or for special events or things of that nature, because those are overtime charges. Those aren't things that can be contracted out to anyone else. They have to be done by the folks who are licensed and credentialed and able to do those jobs. And at the end of the day, one of the big strains we have seen, whether it's in our emergency operations center, law enforcement, fire and rescue, et cetera, the sheriff's office, is that by having people on forced holdovers or overtime, we're burning people out. And that is a significant concern because all government operations during COVID were taxed tremendously. particularly our front-facing employees who had to work in public, not on Zoom, throughout the pandemic. And we are at a deficit in terms of those workers. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lutke. Not seeing any other comments from colleagues. Ms. Michelson, Mr. Howard, thank you for the presentation. I think that has set us up nicely for the week of conversations that are about to begin right now. So thank you. So colleagues, we're going to start our full council budget work sessions based on the recommendations that have come out of committee, and the first work session will be on the WSSC Water FY24 operating budget. Mr. Levchenko and representatives from WSSC. Good morning, everybody. So I will share with everybody that at the T&E committee, WSSC presented its FY24 operating budget, which is a proposed $931 million operating budget, which is $66.6 million additional from the previous fiscal year. It's 7.7% proposed increase. There are no changes in the system development charge, although there is a quarterly account maintenance fee and infrastructure investment fee increase of 7%. And the T&E committee unanimously supported this recommendation. Mr. Levchenko, was anything left out before I turn it over to WSSC?
Just to note that you've been talking a lot about the reconciliation list and spending affordability. WSSC Water has its own spending affordability process, and obviously that affects its rates and its fund balance and so forth, but it's not part of your tax-supported reconciliation list process. So just to make that clear here. And I did note in the packet some of the larger, more significant cost increases that WSSC Water is experiencing. Those are in more detail in the T&E staff report that's attached. And also, there's also a lot of discussion at committee about the revenue status for WSSC Water, which is most of the revenue is coming from volumetric rates, and that revenue has been essentially flat for a number of years, even as population has grown in the county because of water conservation, which is a good thing from an environmental standpoint, but does create some financial complications when 85% of your revenue is coming from water use. So that's also sort of part of the landscape of their fiscal situation, which I think both Montgomery and Prince George's County Council committees, the T&E committee here and the TIEE committee at Prince George's, will have more discussions about that after budget as we move into the spending affordability process for WSSC Water this fall. So that's a very important piece that we will be dealing with going forward. But we also have a lot of folks from WSSC Water here, including the general manager and other senior leadership who are here to answer questions.
Very good. Ms. Powell, I'll turn it over to you and your team. Welcome.
Thank you for having us again, President Glass. We don't have a specific presentation. And again, for the record, I'm Keisha Powell. I'm the General Manager and CEO of WSSC Water. The team is here today to answer any questions you may have.
I don't see any questions from colleagues, but I think it is important for the public to understand a little bit more what Mr. Levchenko just mentioned, and particularly because we have a majority of the council who is new and might not have engaged in this conversation before. Can you speak about the declining rates despite the increasing population that we have here in Montgomery County in the DMV?
Certainly. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
We, as Mr. Levchenko said, we have experienced flat consumption. So although population is growing, we don't see that in the consumption that we're billing from, and that's something that we're taking a closer look at to see where that flat consumption is coming from. But it does impact the amount of revenue that we would expect to bring in. So even though we have raised rates, we're not seeing a significant increase in the revenue that we're bringing in because of the flat consumption. We do know that with new construction, there is the use of low flow fixtures and such. We have also been going through a process of repairing water mains and identifying large leaks in the system to tighten up the system. And we're looking at the non-revenue water or water loss from the system. That has gone up and down, but we're right now around 19% of the water that we are treating, we are not recovering in revenue. So that is work that we're doing on our part, and we intend to put something in place to decrease that amount of water loss. But overall, we are seeing flat consumption, and that directly translates to the revenue that we bring in.
So water efficiency and energy efficiency might be good for the planet, but it's posing some management and economic issues within WSSC.
Well, definitely we call it the conservation conundrum.
Conservation conundrum.
We do want to do the right thing, but we also have, no matter how much water is being used by our customers, we still have the same infrastructure in place that we have to maintain. We maintain over thousands of assets, totaled at $9 billion worth of assets that we're having to maintain and invest in, and at the same time having to install new assets as well, in addition to supporting our close to 1,700 employees with the commission that are responsible for maintaining the infrastructure and providing service to our customers.
Very good, thank you. And Mr. Baronet, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, as well.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Mr. President, and the entire council, especially the T&E committee, for your continued support. And thanks General Manager Power and his staff for everything they've done, all the work they put in, and also to Mr. Lechenko. So thank you again for the continued support.
Thank you. And my questions seem to have opened the spigot, and I now have a number of colleagues who want to speak. Councilmember Jawando.
Very slightly spigot open. Yeah, exactly. Good morning, Ms. Powell and Chair Baronet and all the team. And I know you're in a hard spot, as you mentioned, the conundrum, and it just really underscores that, these consistent rate increases, which we'll approve here today of 7 to 8% with flat usage. I just think they're not sustainable increases for especially low-income, vulnerable residents. And I feel like we're here every year approving these, and I think it speaks to we just have to explore other strategies of how you're financed and funded. I mean, you provide a critical service, and you have the maintenance issues that you're talking about. You have your employees, but also you have this tension of these just are not sustainable increases year on year. And so it's not just a county council question. It's a state, it's a national question of how we fund infrastructure. And so, I would love to, hear even just briefly of you how you're thinking about that. I think about this in the context of jobs that won't be here in 5 to 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. And it certainly will impact you with the advent of AI. How are we making sure we are creating a system that is actually sustainable and can deliver service over time? Because these trends aren't going to go in the opposite direction. They're going to continue to go in the same direction, and they need to for an environment. But the costs can't keep rising, particularly for vulnerable residents. So, welcome to the job.
Thank you, thank you, and thank you for that question. It is something that is top of mind for us. we're not only focused on affordability for our customers here locally, but we are part of the national conversation. Last week was Water Week, and we participated in discussions in DC for the water policy fly-in with EPA and others. We were also part of a panel that talked about preserving 2 tools that help us with affordability for the utility, which is passed on to our customers, and that is maintaining tax-exempt bonds, municipal bonds, and also repealing or bringing back the advanced refunding option for our bonds, so that gives us more tools in the toolbox to ensure that we can preserve the affordability or make it more affordable for ourselves and our customers. Where our customers are concerned directly, we were notified also last week, I believe it was, that we received $3.9 million from the $20 million that the state of Maryland made available to assist residents that became found themselves in arrears as a result of the pandemic. We are looking at how we would apportion those funds for our customers, but we do have that $3.9 million. We have a customer assistance program already, which allows us to waive any late fees, but also the fixed charges. We're looking at establishing 2 additional customer assistance programs, because we recognize that we have many customers that are in arrears because they have very high bills due to property side leaks. And we want a way to assist those customers to help them get their bills back in good, or their accounts back in good standing. We also have the water fund, which we're looking at putting additional funds into and trying to find ways to keep that fund sustainable. And then a 4th customer assistance program would be to look at how we extend greater levels of or more assistance to customers that have varying income levels. So providing funding not just for fixed fees, but also a portion of the volumetric charge of the bill to again make it more affordable. So we're trying to expand our suite of customer assistance programs to meet the needs of our customers that have different needs for assistance.
I appreciate that, and I'll pass it on. There's a lot to follow up on that, but we will do so with you and your team directly. I'm excited to hear about that last program, because I think as we do these increased rates, you're going to have different people that slip into the unaffordability bucket year on year. So having different tools at your disposal will be important.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Lutke.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you. Obviously understanding the need to make sure, even if water usage is down, you still have to make sure it's safe and clean and all the things that we expect, those non-negotiables, right? But one of the other non-negotiables that I want you to speak to is, sort of what different aspects of your budget touch upon the need to protect the water supply and system from threats.
Yes.
If you could, without telling me how you do it, because I know you can't say that in an open meeting, but could you speak to that and the increased, as I understand it, needs in that arena that have come up in the past few years? Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that we don't really see and we don't talk a whole lot about when we're talking about water infrastructure is the cyber element and making sure that we are cyber resilient. From my first week on the job, we've had extensive discussions about making sure that we have the right cyber resilience, cybersecurity posture, and we have to ensure that we are investing in that as well. As you may be aware, EPA has put a framework in place, and we're continuing to have those discussions with them. We are also, and one thing I did not mention from an affordability standpoint is ensuring that we're pursuing more external funding to support our capital program. We have established an external funding task force, and as part of that work, we're looking for funding for various things, including the funding that has been made available for cyber, as well as for our infrastructure. The facilities that we manage, we have 2 water treatment facilities. We've had recent discussions about the changing regulations around PFAS, or the the man-made chemicals that have found their way into the environment. Now we have proposed regulations that we'll be submitting comments on, and have we did a lot last week. We also met with EPA last week to talk about the new regulations and the cost of those regulations. And we continue, again, thinking about affordability, to urge that the focus really be on source control, because there are many utilities, or several utilities, that are pulling from the Potomac River. And if we were to focus on where the pollution is coming from and controlling it at the source, that could potentially lower the cost of having to remove it from drinking water downstream. So we are very much engaged in those discussions as well. We're also looking at physical security of our assets and making sure that we tighten those up. So from a cyber perspective, making sure that we don't have any bad actors break through to control our processes, also from a physical security standpoint, and then from a treatment perspective, making sure that we are getting ahead. The team has already started to plan and develop a master plan for water quality and treatment, so that we continue our track record. On May 1st, we celebrated 105 years of providing safe, clean drinking water with 0 drinking water violations, and we intend to continue that track record.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. I don't really have a question. I just wanted to lift up some of the great work you did in presenting really in depth to the Transportation and Environment Committee a couple of weeks ago. And I want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Jawando, for raising those concerns, and just note that particularly 2 things. One, the comparison charts on Circle 17 to 19 in our packets, where you show us where WSSC compares to our neighboring jurisdictions in terms of rates, and where our rates have been historically. I think is very important for us to understand in this context, to know that we are on the lower end when we compare ourselves. And then, as I did when our committee met, I just want to lift up the chapter you have on Circle 59 on racial equity. And the work that you're doing to look at all of your work through this racial equity lens and providing that information to us. It's very detailed and very helpful for us. So I just want to say thank you very much for your work, and looking forward to the meeting at the end of the week.
Thank you, Councilmember Stewart. We, and in fact, our chief engineer is here, and we have been discussing and actually mapping so that we can physically see where our capital program falls, the planned projects, in the areas that are considered disadvantaged areas throughout our service area. We're starting to map more things, including the issues that we're seeing, be it SSOs or basement backups, and correlating it to those areas. Also looking at where our facilities are in those areas, so that we can go back and start thinking about, and the team has already started thinking about, how we prioritize the capital program moving forward to ensure that we're driving equity and environmental justice.
Thank you. Councilmember, did you want to make any additional comments?
No, I think Keisha covered it. Thank you.
There you go. The GM's got it covered. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Good morning. I think you're new here, right? How long have you been in the job? Like a year?
No, since January 1st.
Yeah, less than that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I had to say, before I came to the county council, so you have a history, I was on the Parking Planning Commission. I was on the planning board in Montgomery County. And my first interaction with WSSC was not good, and I need to share this with you. And Fausto, who's the chair of the board, he knows exactly where I'm going. This is one out of so many. I remember getting a phone call from Park Police telling me that WSSC had equipment on one of our playgrounds in one of the most low-income neighborhoods in Montgomery County, in Longbridge. And there was a spot where kids would get on the bus and your entire equipment was just sitting there because you were doing repairs. This will not happen in any other part of this county because people in other parts of the county, they will complain. In this particular neighborhood where it's heavily immigrants and low income, people will just not complain. And the reasons for that, okay? I'm not gonna get into it, but it got me so mad. The Fausto can tell you the story. I had to threaten your staff. I had to remove the equipment right away. And thanks to Fausto, it happened within, like, I don't know, 2 weeks. Everything disappeared. All of a sudden, they find a good space to put their equipment. So that was my first interaction. And it just goes on. Then we had an application coming to Park and Planning to place a hotel in downtown Silver Spring, something that we really needed it for economic development, and the need was there. And the reason why that application did not move forward, because WSSC neglected to work with the applicant to move some of the sewer pipelines. And I know we can talk more details about this, but you just need to hear from me that you need to be a better partner. And I'm saying you as the agency, I know you're new, so this is not targeting you. I think it's great that we have a brand new general manager and a brand new council at the same time, because I'm looking forward to your partnership to move us forward. I'm also chair of the Economic Development Committee, and I'm a tree hugger. I am an environmentalist, and we need WSSC to be really on board. So that's one thing that I want to share. The second thing I wanted to share is that I was paying attention to the Bi-County work group that sets the rates. Their recommendation was actually 8%, not 7%. So I want to hear from you, how does the 7% instead of 8 will impact your AAA bonding? Okay, because it may sound great right now, but in the future, it will be a problem, especially understanding that we have so many issues with backlogs, like the sewer getting back up, right, throughout the county. And by the way, I need a map of when the backups are happening in Montgomery County. You might as well use Prince George's, but I need a map ASAP, because I bet you that many of those locations are happening in my district, and I have a problem with that. So I need to make sure that you have what you need to be successful. So don't listen to me as, oh my God, this woman is scary. No, see me as somebody who's going to be telling you right in your face what's happening and who really wants you to succeed. For you to succeed as a new general manager, you need to have what you need. And there are programs within your agency to help low-income communities. Okay, so I need you to tell me, why are you not moving forward the 8% to ensure that all those repairs that need to happen in low-income communities are happening? So I need the map, and I need an answer on the 7 versus 8 and how that's going to affect your AAA bonding. And I know many of these things we're gonna work on after the budget when we're talking about restructuring your agency in terms of finances and how you're financing all these needs. But at least now, since we're voting on this, I would like that feedback. And Natalie, nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for the questions and for the direct, honest feedback. I really and truly appreciate it. I think the only way that we can get better moving forward is to know where we need to do better. And I believe we have started that process. We still have some ways to go. But I do think that, and I know a member of our team sent with the updated communication, and I hope that reached everyone, with the new contacts, points of contacts, and the change in our org structure, we also sent a link to the transition report that was developed, which has 178 recommendations that were identified. In part, we didn't have time to meet with everyone before we were prepared to deliver that report, but it's an evergreen document, and we'll be updating it. But that's to say that we understand there is opportunities for us to improve, and we intend to do that. We have already mapped, and we actually, in our commission meeting in April, we shared with the commissioners an example of the type of data that we're pulling together. So we have that map, and we will get that to you as soon as possible. I would ask that my colleagues speak to the rate increase. I mean, we have talked before about the impacts that we're seeing, not being able to take a rate increase that allows us to be within the financial metrics and the financial frame that we need to be as a AAA rated utility. And we've seen those impacts over time. But at the same time, we are mindful and cognizant of the same concerns that you have about affordability. But, you know, one thing that we all should be aware of is that for every $1 million we are investing in capital, it's a return of 15.5 jobs. Water fuels economies. And so for that reason, this is a great investment, either in our operation, maintenance, or capital. So just bearing that in mind. Joe or Letitia?
Good morning. For the record, Joe Beach, Deputy General Manager for Mission Support. So our original ask in the budget process and spending affordability began in September. It was for 8%. Both county councils at that time reduced that to 7%. We adjusted our budget accordingly. And for FY24, we can live within 7% and stay on track with our infrastructure renewal program. Now, I'm glad you said that, because we're going to be back here in FY25, FY26, because we have a long-term program to maintain our AAA bond rating. It's very important for long-term customer affordability that we maintain that AAA rating. Right now, we're under a negative outlook with Fitch. So we have developed a very detailed plan for managing and staying and keeping our AAA bond rating. Part of that would be on the revenue side. Part of it is going to be on our operating cost side as well. We're going to continue to make investments in our infrastructure as well. We also have a long-term plan to look at non-rate ways of raising revenue. We have intellectual property licenses. We just got a patent on a device that will change fire hydrants, and right now we're licensing that technology. We're also looking across all of our real estate assets to see which ones are surplus and can be monetized. So we are working on those areas to sort of maintain our AAA bond rating and not be exclusively dependent on our rates as well.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
If I could
yes.
just add one, we also invest in research that is tied to our operations. So as chemical costs are increasing, we're also looking at ways that we can improve our treatment regime at our facilities to reduce our operating costs, our usage of chemicals. If we can reduce the usage of chemicals, we can reduce our operating costs, because that is one of the most significant costs that we see. Chemical costs increased by 74%. And we know that our partners at DC Water are doing the same to look at how to continue to reduce operating costs, since we do contribute a portion of our budget to that facility since it treats flows. And we have the biosolids facility that is under construction, which will consolidate management of our biosolids and hopefully give us an opportunity to reduce operating costs, and at the same time bring in some alternative revenue that can be used, put back into the operation as well. Thanks, Joe.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to our new director, Ms. Powell, and to Chairman Fausto. I just had a question about the fee increases I'm looking at. the fee increase projections through FY29. It appears that they continue to go up next year, then down in FY29, and just wanted to know how long this increase is expected to continue. Is some of this going towards the debt service? And just wanted a bit more information on the CIP project's connection to this.
The fixed fees that are a portion of the bill?
Yes.
Yes. It's usually standard practice to increase fixed fees at the same portion as the volumetric. That's something that we started doing last year. And so it's actually a bill increase of 7%. So the volumetric as well as the infrastructure investment and the account maintenance fee, they're all increasing at 7%. So the entire bill increases at 7%. One thing that I would like to point out is that our fixed, a lot of our costs are fixed. So these fixed fees help to cover the fixed cost, and the infrastructure investment fee pays for a portion of the debt service on reconstruction. And debt service is the largest portion of our operating budget. So this is something that helps us to fund infrastructure. Also, WSSC Water's fixed fees are a much smaller portion of the bill than most utilities, water and sewer utilities. We are at less than 10%, where the industry standard is anywhere from like 20 to 30%. So this is something that we are looking at, and it's been looked at with the cost of service study that we conducted this year. And so this is something that we are looking to adjust for FY25, and it will probably be higher next year.
Okay, thank you. I also had a question about the proposed budget increases for salary enhancements. I know that some of these are one-time enhancements, but I see almost $9 million.
Some of the increase, a lot of the increase that you see in salaries and wages, we'll be moving money from outsourcing from our call center. While we were using temps for our call center, and we're actually converting those to permanent staff. So that's 31 positions. Our COLAs and merits, they are actually what we've budgeted. We're still in the middle of union negotiations, so we can't speak to that. But what I can say is that they're less than what's budgeted for Montgomery County.
Okay, and does this budget include any executive bonuses?
Executive bonuses?
Yes.
No.
No
bonuses. But I will say that we have had a revolving door with some of our critical positions in the operation, and have taken a look at many of the positions where we're competing with at least 3 or 4 other utilities in this region, where we're having employees leave to go to those other utilities. It is important for us to be more competitive, and that, again, was reflected in the transition report. We have very good top talent, and many of our positions we have invested in training to get them skilled at a different level, but they still would leave to pursue additional compensation. So that's one thing that we're trying to be mindful of and start to address with our workforce.
And if I could add, our employees, because of the downturn in our revenues during the pandemic, our employees did not receive pay increases, either COLAs or merits, in FY21 and FY22. FY23 was the first year we were able to give COLAs and merits to our
one-time
employees.
bonuses. I saw that there were bonuses.
Yeah, so that, that did set us behind in terms of
Mhm.
competing for talent.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Alanos.
Thanks. Just to share a quick story. So I recently got a call from a constituent whose sister lives in Jackson, Mississippi, and anybody who's been following that story it's just beyond heartbreaking. and she lost her sister because the hospital was not able to operate the dialysis machines effectively because they require clean water, leaving behind an 8, a 6, and a 4-year-old girl. And the constituent is now bringing those girls here to Montgomery County and needs assistance, and so that's why she had reached out. Having a strong WSSC and system regionally obviously is so fundamentally important, but because you all have operated at such a high level for so long, it tends to be something we take for granted. And I agree with, obviously supported my colleagues in the previous council in trying to bring down as much as possible those increased fees, because they can't be looked at in a vacuum. With inflation hitting families, this council considering a 10% property tax increase and a significant recordation tax increase as well, collectively, this is impacting our residents in a variety of different ways. But I agree with Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez that we are going to have to look next year very closely at those infrastructure issues, because this is not something we can put off and wait until we are in crisis. Now, Jackson is an extreme example, but it's here in the United States of America, in a capital city, in a state. So it can happen anywhere, and we have to make sure that we stay ahead of the curve. So I appreciate all of your efforts, and I also, as my colleagues noted, I know there's strong evidence that you've tried to mitigate the impact, especially on our most vulnerable residents, for the fee increase. So there are many options, more so than there were before, in trying to address those financial hardships, which we are all seeing and we're all feeling. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that story and making that statement. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I have a personal connection to Jackson, Mississippi, having served there as a director. And I can tell you, it was not as bad as it has been, but it was extremely difficult. And I just gave a talk on Friday to a group of water professionals. So it's kind of like preaching to the choir, but that what happened there was a result of a lack of people, because they lost people. They could not keep them because they couldn't compete salary-wise or attract. It was very difficult for us to attract water workers to come work there, and the continual loss of staff caught up with them. And it's also funding. And when I joined the city of Jackson, it was just after they decided they had approved a 100% rate increase, and also decided to tax themselves, putting an infrastructure sales tax in place. And still, that was not enough to keep up with years of deferred maintenance and deferred capital. So I agree with you. While we are doing well, every utility in this country is a few $1 million, a couple $100,000 away, a few people away from a crisis. And we do a very, very good job with the limited resources that we have and with the financial constraints that we have to ensure that we don't, that our utility does not get to that. We are determined, but we are losing people as well, and it's difficult to attract when you're not competitive, and you don't want to fall behind on investing in your infrastructure, because if you do, it is very difficult to catch up. So thank you for raising that.
I appreciate Councilmember Albernaz closing on that note, because ultimately this budget and the work that each and every one of you do is to provide safe and clean drinking water and to have a functioning infrastructure where we never know the problems that exist. Yeah. You mitigate them before we see them, before we get emails, phone calls, and texts about them. So thank you for your work, but clearly there's work to do ahead. To make sure that the rate increases are fair and equitable, to make sure that there are cost savings, and to make sure that you maintain your AAA bond rating as well. And so, colleagues, all of the discussion that we're going to be having today and throughout the rest of the week, they are straw votes. So with that, all those in favor of the WSSC budget as supported by the T&E committee, raise your hand. Very good, and that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you all.
Next, we are going to turn to the FY23 to 28 CIP for a number of items regarding conservation of natural resources, stormwater, and facility planning, stormwater management, flood control study, and Wheaton Regional Dam flooding mitigation. The county executive is proposing amendments to the FY23 to 28 CIP for those items. The facility planning, stormwater management is a shift of $778,000. The flood control study would add $2.8 million. And the Wheaton Regional Dam flooding mitigation would delay construction schedule of 1 year to coincide with the latest schedule for the Dennis Avenue Bridge replacement. In addition, adding $76,000 in state aid that has been provided for that project. The T&E committee has recommended support for each of these items. Mr. Levchenko, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, you pretty much covered it. I did want to note the council had taken up some other amendments that had come over in January from the executive and had gone through those and straw voted on those. These represent amendments that came over in March, so we're catching up on some of the later amendments. We've also got some April amendments that have come over that the council will be dealing with. But as you note, the facility planning project is a technical adjustment. The Wheaton Regional Dam flooding mitigation project is it's a unfortunate but construction delay, but it's reflecting reality. The project is linked to the Dennis Avenue Bridge project. The flood control study, the committee and the council had talked about this earlier this year. At the time, we didn't have the phase 2 work recommended by the executive, but we knew it was coming over. The phase 1 study is essentially complete, so this will move into more specific watershed analysis. This will ultimately lead to a phase 3, which will be actual implementation of flood control measures that will be projects or sub-projects that the council will have to discuss and approve subsequent to this. So this is still essential planning work to get us to that essential next phase of actually doing the work.
Thank you. Turn it over to DP. Do you have anything to add?
Good morning. Vicki Vaughn, Acting Deputy Director for the Department of Environmental Protection. I think you both said it very well. We are here to answer any questions you have.
Very good. And I do not see any questions from colleagues, so all those in support of this T&E recommendation, and that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Next is a work session on the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. I'll turn it over to the chair of the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee, Vice President Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate it. If it works for you following the guidance that we have, I'll go through the entire budget, parks, planning, and central administrative services. There may be an interest in splitting it up or taking it as a block, but I'll go through everything first just so colleagues are aware there's 3 parts to this item, and I just wanted to note that. So we have before us the fiscal year 24 Maryland National Capital Park and Planning operating budget, which includes the budgets for the planning department and for parks and for central administrative services. Before we begin, I do think it's important to note, as we talk quite a bit in committee, that the Park and Planning Commission budget is starting out at a lower point than other agencies and departments. The county executive's recommended budget for parks, for instance, is $4.3 million below the commission's request. As we all know, the Parks Department played a critical role in quality of life in the county, always, but especially during the pandemic in recent years, and as we're coming out of it and are being asked to do more perhaps than ever before. There are a handful of budget categories the committee felt were non-discretionary, and so those were put on the high priority list as part of our guidance. The Parks Department also requested funding for program enhancements, and we had a robust discussion of those items and ultimately recommended an amount that was less than the department's request, that are in 3 tranches for your consideration. I'll also note that as we go through these budgets, it was the committee's preference to really dig into what were the top priorities of the department, and we took a position where we didn't include many items as a priority at all and didn't include them in the reconciliation list, and instead tried to really focus on what were the high priorities of the department. And so I just hope that that will be taken into consideration, because that was the attempt and intent of the committee. And I see nodding from colleagues, that was our interest, and I do think we had a really important conversation with the department that was very candid in what their interests were, and we had a good discussion about that. So the PHB committee recommended the following reduction from the Parks Department: an increase in salary lapse to 10% for a total of $821,704, a reduction of $387,727 for a reclassification marker, which is an additional reduction for current and projected salary increases. The committee also recommended the following be added to the reconciliation list for the Parks Department as high priorities: contractual obligations adjusted for CPI. This is personnel costs, $710,100. Software maintenance agreements, an increase in debt service for the Capital Equipment Internal Service Fund for $414,283. Utility and telecommunications, increases in costs for central administrative services, charges, chargebacks, other obligations for $475,812, and operating budget impacts, OBI, 3 career positions and 2.4 work years for seasonal staff to implement completed CIP work programs so that we can implement the projects that we have already gone through and funded, for a total of $461,407. And for program enhancements, essentially we have 3 tranches, $300,000 for high priority for program enhancements, and then the packet actually says 2 tranches of $250,000 for high priority. That actually should be 2 tranches of $250,000 as a priority. So we did split that up. There was a reduction to $800,000 from what the agency request was, and we split that up into 2 categories: $300,000 as a high priority, and then 2 tranches of $250,000 as a priority. I just will note that there is a mistake in the packet, and so that's the reason why those are listed. The numbers are accurate. Everything else is accurate. It's just it should have been listed as priority. The PHP committee did not have any recommendations for reductions or placement on the reconciliation list for the other funds. And if you go through the administration fund, there's increases in benefits, retirement, annualization of prior compensation agreements of $47,286 as a high priority. The chargebacks as part of that annualization from FY23 of $19,497 as high priority. And then principal public affairs specialists at $134,267, summer seasonal intern at $7,000, supplies and materials at $25,800, and other services and charges as $51,900. Those are all listed as priority. So that is the bulk of the Parks Department issues. Moving on to the committee recommendations for the Planning Department. The salary lapse was increased by 1% from 4.5% to 5.5% for a reduction of $207,313. The Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee also recommends the following for the reconciliation list: the Randolph Road Corridor Study, $50,000; Germantown Employment Corridor Check-in, $40,000; Security Information Event Management, $75,800; Burial Sites Context Study, $65,000; Americans with Disabilities Act Compliance, $40,000; and Adequate Public Facilities Planner 3, grade 28, and that would be at $132,927 for a work year at high priority. As noted before, we did not include anything, although there was a large list of additional projects. We did not include anything for the priority list, and those effectively, as the committee's recommendation, would be taken as cuts in order to hopefully prioritize this list. I think it's important to note that the Planning Department is a little bit different than other departments in the sense that the new projects are the projects. In most other departments, new projects are new programs that are add-ons, but we approve planning department funding above effectively compensation and operating expenses. Their work program are the new programs that change on an annualized basis based on the will of the council and approval of the council. And so I think it's important to note that if we don't approve any new projects for the planning department, they will be only reacting to what we ask them to do, but will not have effectively a traditional work program, as has been the way in which their work has functioned. So I just think it's important for us to understand that it is a little bit different than most other departments that we are approving. The PHB committee recommended for the central administrative services an increase of $1.453,356, a 15% over the FY23 adopted budget. That was the request. We recommend reduction of $500,000, which is just over 5% increase overall from the fiscal year 23 budget. That would include $291,167 in compensation, obviously non-discretionary as we've discussed before, from the FY23 increase, and about $452,000 in major known commitments. So just to note there, and I will turn it over to Ms. Michelson and Ms. Nadeau for any additional comments, but the Central Administrative Services is a bi-county dynamic here for new colleagues, aside from the one colleague who knows a thing or two about how this works. But essentially, we are making, in that case, a recommendation which will ultimately have to be reconciled with our colleagues in Prince George's County at the bi-county discussion. The Parks Department and the Planning Department are Montgomery County exclusive funding items, and so we approve those ourselves. But this particular item we have to approve, but our recommendation is essentially a 5% increase to reflect compensation and known major commitments that we've already committed to, and that would be a reduction of $500,000 from the request.
If I could just clarify, reduction to $500,000, not reduction of.
Yes, sorry, reduction to $500,000, excuse me. Yes, thank you. And that is the full committee's recommendation, and unless there's anything to add, I will turn it back to you, Council President.
Well, thank you very much, Vice President Friedson and Chair. And I will add on that very last point that you made and that Ms. Michelson further clarified. Last week, I spoke with our colleagues in Prince George's County. In particular, I had a conversation, two conversations with the chair of the Prince George's Council, Mr. Jernaga, who advocated and explained as to why his body has provided more funding for the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, and hopes that we can find some middle ground between our proposal and their proposal, recognizing that if neither proposal is adopted, the original request as submitted is enacted, which is much higher than even a compromise on our end. So I throw that out there. Colleagues, we'll start with Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. Good point, Council President. Question for the chair or any members of the committee. I just wondered if you could speak a little bit to your decision making around the lapse. Just thinking that for consistency across committees, it would be good to have these conversations as a full body.
Yeah, so I think we could turn it over to the directors if we might, but that was based on discussions. We had non-recommended cuts that they offered. We have looked at historical trends related to the departments, and these were increases in the lapse assumptions in order to find savings without making a material impact on the work program. That was what was intended. The two departments are not the same. The Parks Department has a sprawling personnel department that covers countywide, is in the field on a regular basis. It's a personnel heavy organization. The planning department is much smaller, just based on personnel, and so the impact of changing lapse assumptions would have a huge impact, and so we looked at those very differently, as historically the committee, the prior Fed committee, has done. In fact, the the current chair, when he was staffing this item, raised the issue of lapse last year, even before this became a broader conversation throughout agencies and departments. We discussed this in quite a bit of detail, but perhaps the directors, if it is okay with the council president, could speak briefly on that.
And if I can jump in and then turn it over to them. In the Parks Department in particular, this is reflecting actually what was going on in the department. So as of July, their actual lapse was around 19%. So this is not, forcing them to lapse a position they'd likely be able to fill. It's going towards understanding what's happening right now and their ability to fill positions.
Thank you. Mike Riley, Parks Director. So we have been hiring very aggressively for more than 2 years now. I've demanded that my staff always put filling vacant positions on the top of the list, to the point where when I drive around town, I have a QR code on the side of my car, and if you scan it, you will find every Parks job that is open, and a lot of other things like that. But we're hiring just in FY23 so far. My complement is about 800 merit full-time employees. We've hired 164 people, which just sounds amazing. That's a person every day and a half. Our problem is a lot of those have been internal promotions, and we still have a lot of people leaving. So as we hire, people do continue to leave. The trend, though, is positive. The stat Marlene just quoted at 19%, was about 170 vacancies that we peaked at 3 months ago. We just dipped down below for a day. I got a good report that we were at 139 in the morning, and then we jumped up to 141 by the end of the day. So we're trending in the right direction. Historically, we have budgeted lapse at 7.5%. The truth is we've had a historical vacancy rate that's higher than that. This year, when we submitted our budget, we submitted it at 9%, believing we could get there next year in the fiscal year. But when we got the county executive's recommendation, we bumped it up another 10% to 10%, which was about an $800,000 savings. So I hope you will support that number. I believe we can get there in next year and not have to have a hiring freeze.
Councilmember Mink.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Very good. Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, President Glass. I just had a question about the, sorry, trying to relocate my question. The People's Council, I know that we had quite a few people testify about continuing, not this one, it's the next one, okay. So I will hold my question for the next item. And I don't know if this budget includes the projects for the mapping project that was cut or put on low priority.
So the redlining and mapping project was in the planning department's original budget. At the PHP committee work session, the committee did discuss that item, and the planning department had just finished phase 1, so the committee's request was at the end of the year they go back and review phase 1 and decide if it needs to be expanded or change the scope of that project before the council decides to fund phase 2.
Very good. Vice President Friedson.
Yeah, thanks. We had a very significant discussion. I will note that at first the committee seemed to be inclined pretty firmly and unanimously to move this forward as a high priority, but in hearing from the department and what their goals were, we decided that it would be more prudent to schedule a work session in the fall to get a better handle on what we've already learned from the really impressive work that has happened on the phase 1 of the mapping project, which was inside the Beltway, where many of these actual covenants, not communities because those are countywide, but covenants were focused just based on the land use pattern and growth of the county when covenants were unfortunate but legal. Subsequent to that, determining collaboratively what would be the most appropriate path forward, which we could glean the most effective and useful information for policymaking moving forward. Does that reflect? And if it's okay with the Council President, and maybe Councilmember Jawanda, who spoke quite a bit on this, could answer that question too.
You want to comment? Yeah, go ahead.
Just, yeah, and that's right. And the phase 2 was going to cover the more outer parts of the county. So we had a big discussion about like where a lot of the, I talked about maybe a rescoping of in where you had these restricted covenants in the phase one and the more densely populated areas. There is a big discussion to have about what does it mean now where people who are restricted from having housing in these communities and how that kind of connects to our land use and housing decisions of today. So I think I don't want to speak for the board and the director, they took those comments, they're going to come back to us, we're going to have a session about what might be the right sizing of it. So not that it wasn't important, but just that I don't think we're ready to move to that second phase two.
And there is a question that we need to determine of whether expanding the geographic scope to that point is the best next step, or digging a little bit deeper into the scope that we've already had inside the Beltway would be a better next step to effectuate policy decisions moving forward. And that's, I would say, at the very least, an open question, although it seemed like the committee had an inclination to move in direction to maybe refocus in that sense.
I just think there should also be a lens towards economic investments in those areas and what they've been historically to what they are currently as we're looking forward. So I don't know what the new scope of this mapping project will be, but I believe you're going to share the report of the first phase, and so just looking forward to making sure that the Economic Development Committee is going to be a part of that conversation.
If I can just add, Tanya Stern, Acting Planning Director with the Planning Department. So I think Vice President Friedson and Councilmember Jawando summarized the discussion very well, and the Planning Department is supportive of the PHP's committee recommendation related to this project, and we're very happy to come back to the council later this year to brief the full council on the mapping segregation project, which focused on the prevalence of racially restrictive covenants within the Down County. So in terms of revisiting the scope in terms of a phase two, that was really where a lot of the discussion was around, and we felt that it would be most productive for the full council to have the full briefing on the project and the work we've done to date in order to inform what we should do in terms of next steps.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Albornoz.
Great work by the committee. I appreciate the chairs and the committee's recommendations, which I will follow up with. You all did great in getting folks to come out and testify. I think, and once again, so there are a lot of folks who absolutely love our park system and appreciate the work of the planning department clearly and see the connection to economic development opportunities. And I just wanted to thank you for holding the line on the enterprise fund too. There's always a temptation to increase fees to offset some of these reductions, but the Parks Department has been consistent in not raising them as much as humanly possible because as we continue to nickel and dime our county residents, they notice things like this. So I appreciate those efforts and appreciate your hard work. With that, I yield back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We all appreciate the hard work. And Mr. Zients, this might be, well, we have one more item before, so I'll hold my comments for the next item. Although, right, we'll see, although the roadmap has been laid. So all those in favor of supporting the Planning, Housing, Parks recommendation on this item? And that is unanimous. Okay. And now we will... Oh, Councilmember Mink will hold off, although it is on the straw votes, but duly noted. The straw votes. Yeah. So we'll revote when she comes back. Next item is Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission CIP Parks, and turn it back over to Vice President Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate it. The county executive requested an additional $3 million in cuts via two separate $1.5 million affordability reconciliation PDFs. So essentially just recommending, like we do with other outside agencies, a large-scale cut to the CIP allocation. The PHP committee, as you will recall, rejected the first $1.5 million cut, and the council concurred with that. Of course, these decisions have to be made as part of CIP reconciliation, but recommended to the council that we didn't want to accept that cut. Subsequent to that, as we'll note, based on your memo to the outside agencies, Mr. President, an additional $1.5 million cut came in, and the committee took that up and rejected the second $1.5 million cut as well, being consistent with the first $1.5 million cut that we did not want to accept. Again, of course, subject to reconciliation. Bless you, Councilmember. And as part of that discussion, the Planning Board, based on your request, Mr. President, sent over non-recommended cuts to legacy open space, noting that this would have a significant impact on acquisitions, and noting that this would put the department and the commission in a challenge in order to miss opportunities to take advantage of acquisitions. So that's the first item, and there's a second item on state funding. The State General Assembly was very generous this year and provided $5.495 million in funding, as well as $7.053 million in additional program open space funding. So significant record levels of funding in many ways for ball fields in Cabin John Park, for park refreshers, renovations at Maplewood, Wheaton Forest, Fairland, Rock Creek Park, Muddy Branch, Stream Valley Park, for play equipment at Greenwood and McNew local parks, funding at Ovid Hazel Wells, and funding, continued funding for the Pepco Powerline Trail, as has been requested. So we also, the $7.053 million legacy urban open space, Ovid Hazen Wells, park acquisitions, and Wheaton regional parks, we allocated that funding accordingly at $2.7 million, $1 million, $853 million, and $2.5 million, respectively. One of our favorite activities to do in the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee meeting is allocating state and federal dollars, and so that's what we did with great pleasure and excitement, and so that is before us as well. So that's the committee's recommendation. I did also, as an individual council member, have an item I wanted to discuss, but I will yield to you at the appropriate time when that would be in order, Mr. President.
Sure. If you want to continue going.
Sure.
You want to raise it?
Yeah, so first of all, I hope the committee will accept the recommendations of the committee, which I think were very thoughtful and deliberate, of course, noting that the council, what did I say? The committee, oh, sorry.
I wasn't listening.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to check to see if colleagues were listening, because it doesn't always happen, so I appreciate that. Before moving forward and signaling preliminary approval by the council of the Park CIP as recommended by the committee, I did want to raise one additional issue for consideration, and I will pass along the language that I'm proposing. But as you're all keenly aware, a significant number of residents are upset about plans for a road realignment in a linear park that's proposed on Little Falls Parkway between Dorset and Arlington Road. I've been meeting with community groups and hearing from residents for many months now, and over the weekend, I think many of you and your staffs are acutely aware that we have received over 1,000 emails opposing funding for this project on the heels of a petition with more than 4,000 residents in strong opposition to the project. I know it's sometimes extremely difficult for us to assess public support or opposition for any particular project, and we need to be very careful not just to listen to the loudest voices or those who happen to be able to make it to a committee session or to weigh in on council deliberations. But we also have to recognize when there is overwhelming support for or against a given project and be responsive to our constituents. Let me be clear and reiterate my longstanding support for the road diet at Capitol Crescent Trail Crossing. The road diet, as completed pre-pandemic, was a swift, cost-effective response to the tragic loss of life of recumbent bicyclist Ned Galen in October of 2016. The data supports the conclusion that the road diet has improved safety at the crossing by slowing traffic, eliminating the multi-lane threat, and maintaining a pedestrian refuge, all while providing adequate throughput for traffic. Reducing from 4 lanes to 2 lanes was about safety and required limited costs to accomplish. The realignment of Little Falls Parkway to one side of the median is not necessarily a safety measure alone, but rather a way to create additional space for a linear park. The construction of a linear park on this stretch of road is not a priority of mine or the district that I represent. The proposed linear park has not been recommended in a master plan and has not been a priority of the people in District 1 by any calculation. On the contrary, there are numerous park projects recommended in abutting master plans that have yet to be realized, and I think we should focus our resources on promises that we have already made to the community and we struggle based on limited capacity to fulfill. The District 16 delegation, I will note, in their letter to the planning board that followed mine, also raised similar concerns. The Parks Department recently brought this project to the planning board, who approved funding up to $500,000 for this road diet and realignment. Given the discussions about new turn lanes and construction of a new median, I find this estimate to be unrealistic and expect it to ultimately cost more. As part of the committee's recommendation before us, the county executives proposed $3 million in recommended cuts to the park CIP, which we just discussed. The PHP committee is requesting for us to reject if the fiscal constraints of the CIP allow. I think we need to recognize that it will be challenging to restore all of these funds in reconciliation. And I question whether we should be adding more expensive projects that weren't promised, aren't being requested by the community, and haven't been master planned. We would be able to save a lot of money by maintaining a simple but effective road diet that has proven it will keep residents safe at the Capitol Crescent Trail crossing, with one lane in either direction surrounding the existing median as it was prior to the pandemic, rather than realigning the travel lanes, building a new median, ripping up asphalt, and installing a linear park. In a budget that is full of difficult choices that we have just begun to make starting today, I just don't know why we would insist on throwing money at such a divisive and unpopular project. So in that spirit, I propose adding the following language to the PLAR, Vision Zero, and Urban Park Element CIP in the capital budget. If you concur with my assessment of the situation, this language would signal the council's views on the project and desire for further review and oversight. The language would read, any realignment of the remaining 2 lanes between Dorset and Arlington on Little Falls Parkway must be reviewed by the council before funds may be utilized for this purpose. No funds may be utilized for the implementation of a linear park in this section of Little Falls Parkway. It's important to note that this will allow the council to review realignment of the roadway to ensure it's cost effective and it accomplishes our shared safety and Vision Zero commitments. I'll move that forward now, Mr. President.
There's a motion by Council Vice President Friedson. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Katz. Okay, up for conversation. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Wow, I have so much to say, so bear with me. Number one, I will say that, and I want to mention this just because it's happening in my district and it's been very controversial. If you read MoCo 360 today, or yesterday actually, you could see the controversy of a sidewalk in my district where communities have been divided on an issue, okay? And I took a stand even though I have received so many emails and phone calls from people opposing the sidewalk. And I mentioned the sidewalk because this issue on the Little Falls Parkway has to do with Vision Zero, has to do with our commitment to ensure streets are safe for people to walk, bike, roll, and drive, and making sure that we're actually slowing cars down. We have a culture of going so fast, and every time we have a project in our county to slow cars down, it's a good thing. No matter the opposition from whoever is saying that. You gotta really, when you say you're committed to Vision Zero, that you're committed to ensure that communities are safe, to mobilize themselves, then you had to stand up and do the right thing. I will not support that amendment. And I'm not the district council member, but I will support this regardless of where this project takes place in Montgomery County. I was actually on the Park and Planning Commission when we started talking about the Little Falls Parkway. This is back in 2020. I resigned in 2021. Okay, so I know this history, and I know the opposition, but I also know the need, and I know the support that it has had, and I know that this funding that is needed to complete this amazing project is not just about the park, it's about making sure that the road diet that is already there, it's safe for people to cross and for cars to turn, it's actually great for cars, this request. So with this, I'm going to ask the Parks Director, Mr. Riley, if you can please comment on the need for this project so we have a full picture on what's happening here.
Thank you. So as you all know, we've done extensive study on a 4/10 of a mile section of Little Falls Parkway between Dorset Ave and Arlington Boulevard, which includes the portion where the Capitol Crescent Road diet was installed years ago. And we studied it extensively, and it shows that Little Falls Parkway can function fine from a traffic perspective as a single lane road in each direction, much like Sligo Creek Parkway and Beach Drive. And that is inherently safer because it reduces speeds, does not allow passing, and it reduces the multi-lane threat of cars, one car stopping and one car not stopping. And furthermore, the Westbard Master Plan, approved by the prior council, calls for Little Falls Parkway south of Dorset Ave down to River Road to be a 2-lane roadway. So we should study whether it can function as a 2-lane roadway in that section in the future as well. But just let me be clear, all our traffic studies, both internal and external, show that the road moves traffic just fine, without delays, without undue backups, as a single lane road in each direction. Just another data point that I think is surprising to a lot of people. People see cranes in Bethesda and they just say traffic's going to keep increasing. Traffic volume, daily traffic volume will keep increasing. SHA's data shows traffic on the surrounding network, including roads like Wisconsin River and Little Falls Parkway, has been decreasing steadily. When we did our traffic modeling to look at the future, we did, put conservative assumptions in for growth, and there's more than adequate capacity on that roadway to function from a traffic standpoint as a single lane roadway. The only other things I'll say, the linear park concept, yes, at the time we started studying this road, it coincided with when we were ending the open parkway, the popular open parkway on Little Falls Parkway, because it was creating cut-through traffic in neighborhoods, and we recognized that. And that was the original stated vision for those southbound lanes, if they were no longer needed for traffic, that we could consider repurposing them as a linear park, but that's just one option. There's no decision point in front of anybody today that would say we want money to do that, or that that's been decided. It would be a little more than an acre of unused pavement in a park, and it would present an opportunity to do something other than serve for traffic lanes. And I'll just close saying, one of the things we've heard that we agree with is right now the situation that exists on that 4-mile stretch is a temporary situation. It's not really ideal to have a temporary situation long-term with Jersey barriers and bollards, so we did plan to move forward pretty aggressively over the next months to implement the permanent features, which are safety features, and also extended turn lanes and pass lanes to make sure that traffic can continue to move. But before this morning, that was our plan, was to take that temporary configuration and using existing funding and our level of effort CIP programs to make it a permanent configuration.
Thank you. Councilmember Mink.
I'm still pondering over here, actually. So if other council members have questions that they want to raise before me, feel free to put me back on the list for them.
You will be back on the list. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Director Riley, just some follow-up questions. I think I'm understanding this as there's the road diet that you've moved forward with, and we have very good data that shows that this is improving safety by a great deal in this area. And then there's the linear park. And I think when you just answered Councilmember Natalie Fanning-Gonzalez's question, I wanted to follow up on what you were saying regarding the linear park, where that is that needed to continue the safety issues, and if it doesn't get too confusing. And what you just talked about moving forward with the permanent safety features, can you do that if the linear park is being revisited? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So right now, that all traffic is moved onto the what used to be the two northbound lanes of Little Falls Parkway. That's where the traffic is going northbound and southbound. The two residual lanes that used to carry southbound traffic now are closed to traffic. So people right now are using it de facto as an open parkway. So that can stay that way for any period of time, and then at some point we'll study options about what to do with it. That could include something like tearing it out and planting trees or creating some semblance of a linear park. But no, that we were going to go forward with the permanent improvements on the two lanes that are now in the northbound section, which include extended right turn lanes so that traffic does not queue at intersections, left bypass lanes so people can get around people turning left, and then some additional safety improvements at all the intersections to facilitate Vision Zero goals.
If I may give you the planning board's perspective, we didn't deal with the linear park at all. We dealt with the moving lanes. And we heard a number of things from public testimony that we tried to react to. Number one, the director outlined the conditions as I saw them. We wanted 2 lanes of travel where the Capitol Crescent Trail crossed Little Falls, and ultimately there's going to be 2 lanes on the south of Dorset to River Road. So the only question is, how do you get 2 lanes through to Dorset? With that, we had the option of requiring it to go back to being across the median, which again would be an opportunity to increase speeds because it seems safer to everybody. We had a lieutenant from Park Police at our meeting who testified that in her opinion it is a safer condition to have 2 opposing lanes of traffic than the other configuration because speeds would be lower. We also reacted to the comment that going across 2 lanes of high volume traffic with a high volume of pedestrian and bicycles is somewhat confusing for the pedestrians because they have to look both ways to cross those 2 lanes. So the planning board recommended the requirement to put in some separation, some refuge between the 2 lanes of traffic where the crossing occurs with Capitol Crescent. We also recognized that we could move traffic better by having some right-hand turn lane storage and some refuge for left-hand turns, both of which would move traffic better with 2 lanes without going to 4 lanes. I had the planning department's transportation people there. They confirmed that with maximum I think it was 2050 development in Bethesda and down below, that there would be adequate capacity using this configuration of the 2 lane roads. So the planning board was very much in favor of what we required the Parks Department to do.
Thank you, Chair Zions. I appreciate that. Director O'Reilly, sorry. I just want to make sure I understand. So the safety features can move forward. So those can move forward.
Not under the amendment that's in front of you, no.
We would require those to be permanent changes, including the refuge and including the storage of right-hand turn lanes and left-hand turn storage.
Yeah. Council Vice President Friesen, sorry.
Thank you, if it's okay with the President. The amendment before us has two aspects to it, because there are two issues here that have been completely conflated. With respect to the Planning Board Chair and with respect to the Director, the issues have been conflated. It was presented as a way to create space for a linear park. If 2 lanes were being created in order to follow the master plan recommendation, it would be from Dorset to River. That's not what's under discussion here. It's from Dorset to Arlington, which is where the linear park was intended. That's the reason why this is happening. What the amendment before the body is to separate those 2 issues out and say no funding can go towards a linear park, which there already have been questions of whether or not a pilot would move forward and where that funding would come from, which the council has no authority over because it's level of effort funding unless we do something like this and say that it can't be used in that way. And would say not that funding cannot be used or to take a position on the road realignment, but say that the council needs to review the road realignment before it moves forward permanently, which, by the way, could include ripping up pavement. It could include permanent changes to create new turn lanes. There's been a lot of discussion here, but it's all hypothetical. We don't know what the median or the pedestrian refuge is going to be that the planning board has requested. We don't know how much it's going to cost. We don't know what the turn lanes are going to be. We don't know how wide they are. We don't know what that's going to cost. So what is before the body currently is to include in those 3 items, which are the items that we understand may be used for these purposes, to say no funding can be used for a linear park currently for this budget until it comes back to us, and that decisions and permanent efforts to realign the roadway cannot proceed unless and until they come back to the council and the council reviews it. And by the way, there's temporary conditions now. The council is not preventing temporary conditions, and there was a change, a indefinite temporary condition pre-pandemic, which I have said I strongly support and continue to support, which went from 4 lanes to 2 lanes already, but on opposite sides of the median.
May I ask that if this does move forward, the time frame to then come back to the council, so that we can move to permit? No, I'm asking how much time do we think would move forward? That was just a question. How much time would be needed?
I'm not understanding the question.
If we move forward with this language that Council Vice President Friesen is recommending.
Well, I'm not sure when we would come back to the council. I don't know the answer.
Okay. Thank you. So this is, I'll just say that I thank Council Vice President Friesen for looking at this issue, for the planning chair and the planning board, as well as the director of parks and all the staff. I think this is a complex issue, and while I'm very much committed to the Vision Zero and moving forward on the safety concerns here, today I'll defer to the council member who represents this district and support the amendment.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Stewart. So I'm going to jump in here. I appreciate the questions and trying to decouple a complex situation. There is a road diet that exists and that there is a park that is being proposed. Those are 2 separate tracks, quite frankly. And the question I have for Director Riley and Chair Zients, when we look at the county as a whole, we see that there is clear and convincing data that argues for pedestrian safety and park enhancements in parts of the county that are often unrepresented or underrepresented. There are places on Veers Mill Road, there's Randolph Road, there's Georgia Avenue. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez alluded to this in her comments. And so my question for you all is, when you are making budgetary decisions, which are essentially policy decisions as well, how do you focus on areas to create these parks, to enact some of these changes in particular areas?
Well, there certainly we look at what the conditions of existing use are. In particular, here we have one of the most heavily used trails in the county. We do look at an equity focus in where we are putting funds in the future. But again, we were dealing here with not the linear park, but the road itself.
So I'm very proud of our last few CIPs being run through our equity focus mapping areas and trying to prioritize investment in those communities. I think you'll see that in the state funding we just got, how well spread that the investments are all around Montgomery County. On this particular, I just want to again be really clear about this idea of a linear park. It is very possible that that will never happen. That would be something that after we were going to implement these road safety improvements, we were going to go out to the community and have more dialogue. And for all I know, the recommendation that might come out of that dialogue is tear up the pavement and plant trees because it's the most economical thing to do and it meets our climate change goals. I don't know what would come out of that. So I just want to be clear, it's my fault about this linear park coming to the forefront of the conversation. It came out of my mouth at a time that we were just ending the open parkway on Little Falls Parkway because of the cut-through traffic. And if you go back to 2020 in December, Council President, you and some of your colleagues will remember a conversation where the big issue for Little Falls Parkway was the Parks Department had suspended the open parkway for a period of time because of labor shortages. And what you were all asking of me then is, how soon can you get that back going? And we did get it back going, and then of course the cut-through traffic came. So yes, I will acknowledge publicly part of the impetus of this study was to look at, can we create a situation where you could have an open parkway-like experience in the future? But the deal is, as we did the study, we came to a very conclusive conclusion from a public safety point of view, is this road has the capacity to function in a safer alignment as a two-lane parkway, and that's where we are today.
In your years of service, of which I appreciate, and with that service comes knowledge of the Parks Department and of the county, during your time, how often have you come up against a proposal for a park in a community that has exhibited or has received this much conversation?
When I eventually retire, I plan to write a book about North Four Corners Local Park.
I remember that one too.
That was a 10-year saga where a certain council member tried to kill a project every year because people did not want a typical active community park. They wanted a conservation park in Four Corners on 6 acres that used to be a former high school. That we eventually built a soccer field on. I don't know if any of you made it to Acoustics and Ales last Thursday. I was out of town, but I saw the pictures, and the park was just full of community members celebrating North Four Corners Park. The other one is the Matthew Henson Trail. Very similar 8-10-year saga where we just had mostly neighbors who lived along the alignment of the trail fighting it for reasons being cited, either environmental reasons or connecting one neighborhood to another wasn't a good idea, those types of things. So it's been rare. Most park projects are love fests. The question is, how soon can they be delivered?
Right.
But we have had some throughout my career that have been similar to this, where people do get very opposed.
And I think the two examples you provided are good and relevant to this conversation, where the Henson Trail, by your own acknowledgement, was a few folks who live around there. And the North Four Corners Park, which is down the block from me, I chaired the Silver Spring Citizens Advisory Board at the time, and remember that conversation. And again, it was a few vocal folks who were concerned about it. This is a far different case. This is not a few folks who are concerned about this. This is a broader community. And the question I asked at the beginning was, about places to build in other parts of the county, because I know there are people pining for parks in so many parts of this county. And I think we need to take a step back and, from a value proposition, from a budgetary perspective, and for policy making, figure out where people want things and how we can invest in those communities where they welcome it with open arms. And let me dovetail that with the fact that in the year 2023 already we've had more than 200 people injured on our roads, more than 4 people who have been killed. We can make our roads safe. We have to make our roads safe. We can have parks. We can continue building parks. But I just want to clarify that under this proposal that Vice President Friedson has offered, the road diet to make that area safer for pedestrians, for bicyclists, and for drivers would remain intact. Is that correct?
It's my understanding, the road diet right at the Capitol Crescent Trail.
The road diet would remain intact for the safety of pedestrians and drivers and bicyclists. I think that's getting lost in this conversation. And so
it will remain intact without a pedestrian refuge, which is one of the safety
would remain
recommendations.
intact, Mr. Riley. It would remain intact as it's currently designed, correct?
Correct.
And if it's been designed for safety and it's been that way for years, you're telling me that what currently is in place
was in place since October.
Correct. Okay. October, months. Yeah. And so pedestrian safety, bicyclist safety, road safety is important. The road diet will remain intact. And all the proposal does is say, let's further develop the idea for a park that its own community can galvanize around. Or quite frankly, I would support building a park in another part of the county where people welcome it with open arms. With the resources that we have, the few resources that we have, I think we can do all of these things. I think it is a sensible proposal, and I will be supporting the motion. There's a lot of people who want to speak. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. I think there's just the semantic confusion of the linear park. People are envisioning a park versus my understanding from this discussion is that it's not the park, it's additional changes to the road, correct? Okay, so what is the status of Dorset to River and what's happening there?
Right now, the Parks Department is not doing anything on Dorset to River. That's just the section where the West Bard Plan recommends ultimately that it be 2 lanes.
So, but is it in the hopper to look at? Is it?
What we were contemplating would be at some point in the future, we would do a similar study on that section and bring that decision to a head.
Okay. Thanks. I thought that was it was further down that you had looked at it, and that was part of the traffic study that you, okay. Thank you. I'll support the district council member on this.
Councilmember Albornoz.
Thanks. I think Councilmember Stewart said it's a complicated issue, and she's right. And obviously most of us have not had the benefit of being as close to this as Council Vice President Friedson has been and his staff, who have been receiving the lion's share of constituent concerns since the beginning of this. And I'll just say a few things for context. I have a great deal of respect for our Parks Department, who I know all of us do, who are trying their best to think as creatively as humanly possible to follow through on their mission to help improve the quality of life and overall safety of county residents. And I've known Director Riley for a long time, and I know that he approaches all issues very thoughtfully. And so I do take him at his word, for sure, that the Parks Department saw an opportunity to build off of what had been a long-standing project and are advancing something that could be innovative if executed correctly. But we do also have to consider the impacts on the broader community, and they have been pretty clear. Usually you get some folks who say, hey, they're not speaking for everyone, but there has been consistent constituent feedback that we have received. And I think moving forward, we also need to look at these projects, and I know we do, but particularly those that are new, more holistically than we have. There's an ongoing issue in Beach Drive, and the Parks Department has been responsive and to some of the concerns that have been raised by residents, but those concerns continue. And some of those concerns have been raised by our own Department of Transportation, because we're trying to adjust, even if something seems like a great idea, on the residual impacts to broader communities that are sometimes unintended. And we don't live in these communities, we don't see it every day, we don't walk our dogs as we are walking through, but they are feeling the impacts of what are very thoughtful ideas, but having a real impact on quality of life within the residents that immediately surround these great projects. So I don't think this is an unreasonable proposal for us to be able to discuss this as a body moving forward, the proposal put forward by Council Vice President Friedson. And I also think that, there are, as has been mentioned, many other communities that are clamoring would love to have this opportunity. And so I think we need to bear that in mind as well. And so I will support the amendment as proposed. And I'll also note, just Council Vice President Friedson did a fantastic job as our lead for parks in the last term. You were not going to find a bigger champion, particularly through the budget process, in fighting for our Parks Department. There were a number of projects that were accelerated. There were a number of projects that he personally advocated for at the state level that brought back state funding. And so I know he and his team are fully committed to ensuring that the Parks Department achieves its overall vision and goal, which provides me with more comfort as the district council member that he's trying to look at this holistically from all angles. So I will support the amendment, and I yield back to you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Council Vice President Friesen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councilmember Albornoz, for your comments. Thank you to colleagues here for your consideration. I appreciate you saying that, because earlier on in this conversation, it was invoked to do the right thing, somehow implying apparently that I'm not doing the right thing or listening to the wrong people, or somehow am not coming into this conversation with a level of integrity that I think I've worked really hard to do on a daily basis, despite there being questions of what is the right thing and what is in the public interest. And I will say I took offense to that. I continue to take offense to that. And I appreciate the reiteration of how staunchly I have supported the Parks Department, and how much I have supported not only parks in District 1, but throughout Montgomery County. And throughout the course of my term here for a little over 4 years, I have fought for state funding for parks in areas that are beyond the constituents who I am fortunate enough to represent. But there are points in time when we have to make choices, and we have to understand what is happening, and the overwhelming number of people who have expressed concerns, and the fact that we don't have enough funding to fulfill the parks commitments that we desperately want and that we desperately need and that we should be moving forward. And with respect, this is not a sidewalk project. I have been a outspoken supporter of Vision Zero and of road safety. At times it has been extremely controversial, and I have foregone the politics and the public voices in order to advocate for what I thought was in the public interest and in the interest of safety. In this case, it is a road diet that has worked, that has provided safety, that was not universally supported originally by the community, and still, frankly, is not universally supported by the community. I continue to support the road diet that made the trail dramatically safer for very limited amount of money, almost none. And the question here is whether or not we're going to realign a road, not the portion that was master plan, the portion that actually goes beyond the master plan. I think Councilmember Balcom brought this up really well. If the intention here was just to realign the road to fulfill the intention of the master plan, which is now very late being invoked, we would have started in the area that is actually covered by the master plan. And that's not being done. So I appreciate the indulgence of colleagues here. I hope to have the support ultimately And I would hope that when we come back and take a look at this at some point, which is indeterminate, we understand a full accounting of what the costs are going to be, where the funding would be coming from, and take a holistic view of the full stretch, including the master planned area, to determine what is in the best interests of safety. And so with that, I appreciate it, and I will yield back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
Yeah, I'm also trying to get clarity on this issue and wanted to know, supporting your amendment, Vice President Friedson, would delay the construction of the linear park.
So,
or eliminate
if I may, Mr. President, support of the amendment would require, before any permanent change to the roadway, the planning and the planning board and the Parks Department would have to come to the council, and we would review what the changes would be, what the cost would be, how it would be funded, which is entirely unclear at this point. It also would say that no funding can be used to implement a linear park, which is a separate issue. Now, realistically, if a realignment of the roadway is permanently going to happen, that will take the duration of this year, and the linear park could be funded at a later date. But we are taking at the word of the planning board chair and the planning board and the Parks Department that this isn't about a linear park, that this is about the realignment of the road for safety reasons. And so for that reason, there should be a review here. The two conditions that may continue under this proposal is a temporary piloting and change, which the council has not prevented and really doesn't have the authority to prevent, using operating dollars, presumably, or a return to the previous road diet, which has proven effective for safety and cost effective in terms of limited use of taxpayer dollars by reducing from 4 lanes to 2 lanes the trail crossing of the one super block, essentially. And so what is essentially being proposed in terms of the realignment of the road, just so everybody's clear, because there seems to be quite a bit of confusion, since there was a recumbent bicyclist who was killed crossing the trail, the Capitol Crest Trail, which, by the way, I utilize on a weekly, multiple times a week basis. I know this trail very well. There was a road diet. That was controversial at the time. There was a road diet that went from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. And it goes from Arlington to Hillendale, which is what would be considered a super block from engineering standpoint. It's a very long block, but it's a block. It has the outside lane on both sides are closed off to cars. There are plastic pylons that are placed for those who have traveled along this stretch in some capacity. What the realignment does is it moves, instead of it being 1 lane of traffic on each side of a large median, there are 2 lanes that have been moved to one side of the median with no median that go in opposite directions. And the other 2 lanes on the other side are open and can be utilized for another purpose. That's the question. Then the second piece of that is the extension. It went, instead of for the 1 lane, it went to 2 lanes from Hillendale to Dorset. And so it goes from Arlington to Dorset currently, which is effectively 2 super blocks. And actually the second lane, it really actually isn't on one side because it has to return back to the other side in order to get before Washington Episcopal School, if you're looking for a reference point, in order to get to the additional lanes before it hits River Road. So all this amendment is saying is before a permanent change is made to that roadway, it would have to come back to the council for review, and we would have to understand exactly what it's going to cost, how it's going to work, what improvements are being made, and unless and until that point, they can't spend money to permanently realign the road, and there's no funding that is available out of these 3 line items in the capital budget in order to implement, in the meantime, a linear park.
Thank you. Marlene, if you wouldn't mind explaining the staff's position that was shared before the amendment.
Yeah, the staff had not taken a position on this issue. This is something that just has arisen. So there was no staff analysis on the project before you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion. I just like us to be very 100% clear on what the Parks Department view is that this would prohibit and why, if they think that's not a good thing. I just want to hear that clearly stated. As I read it, it seems like it would require you to take money that is in your budget for safety improvements on this specific stretch of roadway to come back and get approval and present a plan. If you think that's not a good thing, tell me why.
We were going to move ahead aggressively to implement the permanent safety improvements. There are some approvals required. We have to go to National Capital Planning Commission, we know that. But we were going to try to move aggressively in a matter of months. I can't unequivocally say when, absent this amendment, we would have the permanent improvements in place, but our goal was going to be 3 to 6 months to try to move that aggressively and be done.
And when you say permanent improvements outside of the current road diet?
Yes, taking away temporary concrete jersey barriers and putting in permanent shoulders. There's a crossover that you make with jersey barriers. We'd make that permanent.
Right.
Things like that. It's extending turn lanes. It all depends on what the council process is and the speed of it, but we can certainly try to get back in front of you in a time frame that allows us to move as quickly as possible. The downside of extended periods of time is simply you're left with a temporary traffic situation. It's not unsafe, it's safe, but temporary traffic situation. Some of the testimony we heard is the temporary traffic situation, because it's new and different, it can be confusing. That's not an invalid statement for people to make, but I think we can still try to move aggressively to a decision point. And then whatever comes out of that will be a permanent road situation.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. That's helpful. And I see, do that. Come back with a plan with community input, and I know it'll come to the council, but it'll probably come to our committee. I would think first, the Planning, Housing, and Parks, and we all want our roadways to be safe. We want there to be permanent solutions, and so I agree with the separating of the park issue. But if you're not ready to do that today, I don't see why we can't pass the amendment. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mink.
Okay, that was a very helpful exchange. Thank you. And thank you to everyone for a good discussion here. I have heard from constituents as well, obviously not in the full volume as a district council member, but their primary concern is ensuring that we are protecting, Vision Zero efforts, that we are protecting the road diet. It does sound like, though, that this amendment is consistent with addressing those concerns. Certainly I would also like to see this moving towards permanence, whatever that is going to be, but I certainly understand here the need for more input and would agree with the request if we can, move this forward as quickly as possible within reason. That will allow us to strike a balance here, and so I'm also happy to support the amendment given those considerations.
Thank you. Councilmember Fani Gonzalez.
This has nothing to do with the park. And I think I actually appreciate that the Parks Director recognized that he made a mistake talking about a linear park in this whole thing. This is about safety in making sure that people who are walking in this area can feel safe to cross the street. That simple. The issue that I have with this amendment, that maybe you should have separate these two. No funds must be utilized by the implementation of a linear park. Maybe you can separate those two. I don't even think this is not a priority for me to have a park there. As the Parks Director mentioned, maybe it would just be a whole bunch of trees planted there and call it a day, and place the park in other areas that are actually needed, or people were actually wanted, at least some of them. So you want to create a delay, further delay to make sure this place is safe for people to cross the street, be my guest, but at least separate these two. That's my request to you, to the council vice president.
Are you making a motion to amend the amendment?
Yes, I would like to amend the amendment to have it in two pieces because they're two different things. These two sentences are two different things, two different issues.
The sponsor of the amendment?
Yeah, with respect to my colleague who has a lot of understanding of the Park and Planning Commission but doesn't represent this area, I literally am on this trail crossing on an almost daily basis. I think I really do understand the safety concerns and the issues. I have been engaged on this issue from the beginning, from its inception, from that first meeting where there has been an acknowledgement that there was a mistake, which I do appreciate and acknowledge, but I don't think it is consistent with the public conversations that have happened subsequent to that meeting that this is separate in terms of the linear park and the road change. There's also a number of questions about what is the safest way to do the road. We still have questions and don't understand what the impact is going to be on a median. I don't think that there is a precedent for a median on a 2-lane road. And that has been raised, and this came out of the planning department. So I appreciate the view here. I don't appreciate the insinuation previously, but I do appreciate the view here. But I will not support and do not accept the splitting of the amendment that I propose, and would hope that those, not just me, who represent this area in the state and at the county, have some level of understanding of the people in the community in which we represent and the communities in which we live.
Okay, the amendment author does not accept the amendment. Is there a second? Okay, no second. Councilmember Fonda Gonzalez, anything else? Okay. Councilmember Sales.
I just had one question about a residential development that's coming to downtown Bethesda nearby. It's about 6,000 residential units, and I know that if this becomes a permanent configuration that loses 2 lanes, are we thinking about how we're going to accommodate future traffic needs with new development?
We have thought about it,
Okay.
and at least the planning department modeling can find that a 2-lane road will accommodate all the development proposed in Bethesda and all the development proposed at Westport.
You said it has, or it could?
It has.
Oh, it has. Okay.
But of course, if there's an individual project, it'll go through the regular development process tests, but I assume it will work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's still an amendment before us that was moved by Councilmember Friedson, Vice President Friedson, seconded by Councilmember Katz. Not seeing any other conversation. All those in support of that amendment, raise your hand. And that is everybody except all those against. That is everybody except Councilmember Fonda Gonzalez. Okay, now we're back to the item as a whole. Any other thoughts or comments?
Do you want to go back to your straw vote on the first issue of the upper?
We're going to get to that in a second. First, let's finish up this, and then I appreciate you always thinking ahead.
I'll move as amended the committee recommendation, Mr. President.
Yes, I do.
Council staff just wanted to note there's going to be some technical corrections to the updated PDFs. So the department's memo that was originally sent had $600,000 of state aid on the minor renovations PDF. The department would like $400,000 of that to go into minor construction and $200,000 into minor renovation. So I just wanted to note that and let you know that you would receive those updated
I'll
PDFs.
move the committee recommendation with both the council staff recommended change based on the request of the department as well as the amended version just approved by the council.
Very good. All those in favor of this amended Maryland National Park and Planning Commission CIP, raise your hand. That is unanimous. Councilmember Mink, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to, if council staff could add me to the count for the previous straw vote that I missed to make that one unanimous, that would be much appreciated.
There we go, and
Thank
that
you.
was unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Last item before recess, colleagues, is the introduction of a resolution to approve the WSSC Water System Development Charge. This is a follow-up on an earlier item on discussion where the recommendation was to approve the system development charge for the FY24 budget at the current approved rates and to increase the maximum chargeable rate. We are required to make this official by resolution, and action on this resolution would be scheduled for May 17th. And so this is introduced, and we will now recess for the rest of the morning. Thank you all, or afternoon.